call this meeting on Tuesday, June the 11th, 2024 of the Gunbarrel City Economic Development Corporation held in the Gunbarrel City Chamber of Commerce. All the pain drugs are just about gone, so.
Thank God.
Gunbarrel City Council Chambers, 1716 West Main Street, Gunbarrel City, Texas. Let's call to order. Roll call from my left.
McCullough here.
Rankin here.
Key here.
Damiano here.
Ligon here.
Bond here.
We have a quorum. Before we go much further, I need to let you know that the Gunbarrel City EDC reserves a right to adjourn into executive session at any time during this meeting to discuss any of the following matters as authorized by Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, consultation with our attorney, 551.072, deliberations about real property, 551.073, deliberations about gifts and donations, 551.074, personnel matters, 551.076, and .089, deliberations about security devices, or 551.087, deliberations regarding economic development negotiations. Please stand for a prayer and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Father, we come to you and thank you so much for allowing us to be together as your servants and being together as your family in this job that we're doing in our mission to bring this city to a closer point. Father God, we just ask that you continue to bless this city and prosper it, prosper each of us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Be seated. Citizens' comments are limited to 3 minutes each. No action may be taken. Any person desiring to speak must fill out a comment form before the gaveling to order of this meeting. Individual citizens' comments are limited to 3 minutes, and minutes are not transferable to another citizen. Any person desiring to speak must come to the podium and be recognized by the presiding officer. That said, do we have any citizens' comments scheduled? Those comments will move further to item number 4. Consider and take action to approve the May 10th, 2024 EDC meeting minutes. May I have a motion?
I move to approve the May 10th, 2024 EDC meeting minutes.
Bond second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, vote to my left.
McCullough, yes.
Rankin, yes.
Key, yes.
Damiano, yes.
Ligon, yes.
Bond, yes.
Motion passes. Meeting minutes are part of the official record. Item number 5, receive the annual comprehensive financial report, our audit, for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2023, which includes the independent auditor's report. We have a presentation tonight from our auditor and from Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith?
Good evening, Board. I just want to introduce Don Almond to you all. Don completed the audit this year for the EDC. He also did our city audit. Amazing, easy to work with, helped us filter through a lot of information, and I'll bring Don up to do his presentation and walk you through it.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. I am Don Almond, CPA, and as mentioned, from Georgetown, So yeah, about 3 hours away. So it was, but I definitely always enjoyed coming up here. Gosh, it's beautiful. Come see y'all's lake and everything. And I am looking to retire in 2 to 3 years. So we'll see. We'll see. Definitely on the list. But first, I guess I do need to thank the board of directors for choosing me and my firm to do the audit for Gun Barrel City EDC. As I said, greatly appreciate the business, enjoy coming up here. So I have a friend from second grade, Gilbert Shelby, who told me about this place too. So you wanted to thank him for his efforts. And do need to thank Stephen and Dr. Smith. They actually did a lot of work with me. Because kind of when we got into this, Dr. Smith kind of warned me the EDC's records were a little bit messy, not too bad, but a little bit. So we went through every note receivable from, all the businesses that y'all have given loans to. We reconciled all those, and we also reconciled the notes payable. So anyway, just wanted to give them some credit, for all the work that they did getting this done too. And without further ado, I will crunch just a few numbers for you, and probably much to your delight, I will not go over all 25 pages. I will just go over 2. So let's look now at page 4 on your financial highlights. As reads, the assets of the corporation exceed its liabilities at the close of the most recent fiscal year by $2,761,128. What the heck does that mean in English? Net position is net worth. So that's the net worth of Gun Barrel EDC is right at $2.8 million. And second bullet point there, as of the close of the current fiscal year, which was 9/30/23, the corporation recorded an increase in net position of $179,412. What the heck does that mean in English? Net position increase is net income. So net income of Gun Barrel EDC was $179,000 for last fiscal year. Right below that, you see the corporation's statement of net position, which is audit speak for balance sheet. So this is the balance sheet of Gun Barrel EDC. Your current assets, that is basically all your bank accounts, so all the checking accounts in the EDC, and so that's about 1.8 million, I think. And then most of the rest of the balance there is those note receivables that I mentioned from the companies that y'all have lended money to here in town. So anyway, that balance is $2,711,000. That's up from the $2,562,000. So you're up about $150,000 on your current assets, which is of course good. Capital assets, that's just the depreciable items that the EDC owns. $745,000 down from $748,000. That right at $3,000 decrease is just depreciation. There were no capital assets added in fiscal year 2023. So total assets, $3,457,000 up from the $3,310,000. So we're up about $147,000 in your total assets. Current liabilities, that's your accounts payable plus the current portion of loans, $163,000. Last year was $35,000, but I don't think they quite had your the current portion of your loans included in that audit report. Long-term liabilities, that's the long-term portion of your loans payable, $532,612, down from the $693,000, so $160,000 decrease there. Total liabilities, $695,745, down from $728,941, so you're down about $33,000 on your total liabilities. The net position or net worth of a Gun Barrel EDC, net investment capital assets, $130,000, up from the $55,152. Restricted in a governmental audit, you do have to show that the funds to pay next year's debt service are restricted. They didn't do that in the prior audit. We did it in this one, $106,930. Unrestricted, that's money free and clear, has no obligations, no restrictions. Very good, strong number here, $2,523,000. Slight decrease from the $2,526,000, but that's over 90% of your total net position of $2,761,000, which is about almost $179,000 up from the $2,581,000 in the prior year. Turn the page, look at page 5. And up at the top, you see the government-wide financial analysis, the revenues, corporate changes in net position, government audit for profit and loss or income statement. So this is the income statement for Gun Barrel EDC. Sales tax revenues right at $721,000, up from $701,000, so a $20,000 increase in your sales tax. Revenue, interest, if you listen to the news, interest rates rose dramatically last year. $59,000, right at $60,000 interest income, way up from the $12,000 the prior year. There was no huge loss on capital assets this year, which was good, $843,000 loss in the prior year. So total revenues were $780,937, up from the decrease from the sale of assets last year. The EDC expenses were $577,584, up from $488,000. So we're up about just under $90,000 there. Interest expense right at $24,000, down from $34,000. Total expenses $601,000, up from $522,000. Your change in net position, it is positive. A net income of $179,000. Again, that big loss last year due to selling capital assets below market value. And that is all the numbers I had for tonight. Any comments or questions?
I have just one.
Sure.
On the economic development expenses, you were saying they were up about 90,000. Was there any particular category that we needed to be observant of going forward?
Let's go back to page 18. I say if you're ever really bored, get the Gun Barrel City audit report. That's like 50-something pages, and read all that. That'll help insomnia for sure. But so yeah, look at page 18. That's your budget to actual comparison. So this kind of shows where you were under budget, and where you were over budget. So I would say payroll costs, you were actually under. Budgeted $164,000, spent $133,000. Dues and subscriptions, you're actually under a little bit. Office expenses under a little bit. So yeah, no, actually, well, because of course y'all budgeted $1,077,000 in project and program expenses and didn't spend near that. So yeah, I mean, I guess just growth, because yeah, actually y'all were under budget significantly in pretty much every category, everything except marketing and advertising. Y'all budgeted $64,500 and you spent $81,500. So yeah, that was the only. Yeah, that's the only area that y'all were actually over budget on. So yeah, no, I think the expenses were just kind of due to growth in the area.
Just out of, am I okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, on that same page, you've got under assets, you've got land. Mm-hmm. Okay, is that, this is a curiosity question, is that retail or wholesale?
Very good question. That's cost.
That's cost.
Yeah, governmental accounting procedures still require original cost on all assets.
Okay,
Which
that's kinda
especially now with the land values is kind of silly, but
Okay.
those are the rules, yeah.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Because like I said, no, I'm sure it's multiple times more than that now, but yeah, no, they, and still, got procedures or no, still original cost.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I want to thank you for the good job that you've done. I want to thank you for driving up here and spending time with us.
You bet.
And be willing to take our views and our questions.
Yes, sir, thank you. Always a pleasure coming up here, great community.
What's that?
Nice job.
We have one more
I
question.
got one more. It's again, it's possibly a stupid question. We had, in 2023, this is 2023, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We own Big Chief Landing. Is that where most of that land is?
Yes.
And that value? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
You bet, thank y'all.
Before I move on further, I want to acknowledge and thank our mayor, Ryan Cruel, for being with us. Where'd he go? There he is back there. And Rita Evans, our councilman, Ken Foster, councilman, and Jay Burson, our councilman. And I also want to thank Kate Weller, the president of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you guys for being with us, and I thank all of our citizens for being with us tonight, too. Go on to item number 6.
Yep.
Consider and take action to approve a donation to Gun Barrel City for a contribution to complete the Gun Barrel City Community Center. I believe we have a presentation on that. Let's do that before we go any further.
You do. It's me. I'm going to wear 2 hats tonight. I guess the good news is I couldn't ask for money at any better time than following the auditor, right? So I couldn't have planned that any better if I'd have wanted to. Tonight, when I do this presentation, I'm going to wear both of my hats. If the logo is in the top right-hand corner, that is my EDC hat. And if the logo is in the bottom right-hand corner, that is my city manager hat. So that's how you can tell the difference in these slides on who is telling you a story from here at the podium. Next slide, please. So I'm here tonight to talk to the EDC about giving a donation to the city to help us complete the community center, which is slated for the park. So some general information, most of you have seen this, but for the public's sake, this is kind of the facade of what the community center will look like. The community center is a 80-foot wide by 70-foot deep, 33-foot high at the peak. There is a basketball court inside. About 5,600 square foot, and that is kind of the west elevation. Next slide, please, Stephen. Some of this is a little hard to read. The box that you see there, closest to the word location, is the police department for some perspective. So that is the bottom road is Municipal Drive, and so that is going to be the location of the community center, and that has all been approved by council, along with the fact that we're building a building, so we're not really here to discuss that tonight. A lot of that happened before I got here. So that is the proposed location in some perspective of where the police station is as well. Next slide, please, Stephen. This is the layout. It's very hard to read when I put it up on a slide, so I tried to make it a little easier. For some perspective, the police station would be where, in the blue box where it says community center floor plan, right? So the front entrance faces Municipal. As you walk into the door, to kind of take you on a short tour, as you walk into the door, there's a lobby there. To your left would be a small office where the staff that mans this facility would be. Right behind that is a training room. There is a door to the outside to the training room that leads directly to the police station so that it can be used as an emergency operations center once it's open, as well as we can use that for computer classes or a number of different small meetings. Directly behind that are two indoor restrooms, a male dressing room and a female dressing room that does include restrooms, dressing areas, and showers. There are also two restrooms that have access to the outdoor area. If you're standing there in the hallway to your left is a gym. It will be marked for pickleball, basketball, volleyball. It will have goals that raise and lower so that we can actually use it for other things and not stationary basketball goals that are down. If you walk through the gym to the other side of the building, in the back corner is the double meeting rooms with a door in between that can be opened and closed. And I'll tell you the sizes of these in just a minute. It's on the next slide. Right in front of that is a kitchen, which also has an access pass-through to the outdoor area. And so if you're inside the building, that's kind of a general tour of what the inside looks like. Next slide, please. And this is kind of what those interior spaces are. You have the multi-purpose court or gathering area, and the multi-purpose room, which is on the front left side. It's about 15 by, the gym is 39 by 54. That room is 15 by 20. That would be your emergency command center with exterior access. The multi-purpose meeting room on the rear right side is about 20 by 40. It would hold about 180 occupants, probably seated theater style, probably a few less than that at tables. Then you have the male-female restrooms, locker rooms with the exterior access. There's one toilet in each of the exterior male and female access. The front left side entry office is 10 by 10 for one occupant. The lobby, you could have, 35 people milling around in the lobby. The kitchen is 11 by 21. It would have a refrigerator, sink, dishwasher, warming oven, microwave, ice machine, cabinets. I call them a food prep kitchen, not a catering kitchen. So in kitchen language, a catering kitchen is there you would go and prepare food. A food prep kitchen is where you would heat items up. You might bring in a catering business to do that. You might bring a caterer in for an event. They could put food together in that kitchen, but it wouldn't be a cook-in kitchen for all practical purposes, not a commercial prep kitchen. And then you have your storage, your mechanical areas, your janitor rooms. All of that is a part of that facility as well. Mr. Mundo has ensured that we have plenty of room. It is the My background, as you all know, is Parks and Rec. It is the number one thing that gets left out of facilities like this is enough storage. All of a sudden, we have 180 chairs. What do we do with them when the person having the party doesn't want chairs? Now they're just in the way. So Mr. Mundo has ensured that we have plenty of space for storage of gym equipment and tables and chairs when they're not in use. Next slide, please. So where did we start? As you all know, I wasn't here when this project started, but I think it went through a few renditions. But it is important to recognize the history of this, and I know that our council spent a lot of time planning and working, and it went over several councils of coming up with what was right for Gun Barrel. And as your city manager and as your EDC director, I'm very excited about this facility because it has a lot of uses for both entities. The ARPA grant that we received, these are federal dollars. They were post-COVID. A lot of cities received this money. Most cities received this money in one form or fashion or another. What I can tell you about ARPA funding, it's the American Rescue Plan Act funding. The first draft of rules for spending this funding was about 300 pages, and they said, here it is, we don't really know. Good luck. Here's the 6 things we'll say you can spend it on, and it went through a lot of renditions. We do have a grant company that's helping us ensure that we are following all of the necessary federal processes to get and spend this money as a city. So the ARPA grant was $1,541,000. I can read all the numbers, or I can give you all rough estimates. You can see them there in front of you. Stephen and I made sure they were very clear on the screen. The city originally had contributed up to about $420,000. And Mickey said last year, I talked to the treasurer for the city, and she informed me that last year they went ahead and contributed some additional money, and so they made overall they made a $500,000 contribution over the last couple years to this project. That gave us with total project funding of about $2 million. We do, as I mentioned, have a grant management company that is assisting us with this. There is no way we could do it if we didn't, because there are so many intricacies in the final ruling put out by the federal government on the reporting that has to be done, the types of reporting. We have to report every invoice we pay. We have to report that we have received an invoice from Mundo and that we have paid an invoice to Mundo. The people that do the work have to be approved. They have to follow special guidelines. And so GrantWorks is working with us to help us do that. Their fee was about $76,000, not uncommon. This is what most cities have had to partner with someone like that. Engineering has been done by Mundo and Associates. They're $202,000. Very common. About 10% for engineers across the board right now is a very common expense. So we're not paying more than we should in those expenses based on my experience doing this. And then we have some soil testing and the security system that we want to put in that will match PD so that PD can watch it all the time. So we never have to worry about having a security issue there because PD will have the cameras up with their cameras, so it will be the same security system. So we're looking at a total for the construction of the project of about $1.7 million. So the total available for construction when it was all said and done was about $1.7 million when we had paid those expenses on the other slide. We went through the entire process because these are federal dollars. We had to do an official bidding process. I believe when it was said and done, we received about 6 bids. The low bid for this project was $2,011,584. Following the opening of those, we had a pre-construction meeting here in this council chamber. We then opened the bids in this council chamber. Joe then went and took apples and oranges and tried to make a match because not every company bids exactly the same, even though you give them very specific criteria for what you're looking for. The 2 top bids were out of Tyler, and we're willing to do everything that the federal government requires. They are general contractors, so they will partner with a number of businesses that they work with. And that was their low bid. Mr. Mundo has actually been to the low bidder in person, interviewed the staff, looked at their schedule, discussed their schedule with them, because it's important that we make sure that whoever we pick to construct this project can actually do the work. right? We can't get halfway down this process and all of a sudden they don't have enough people, or they can't get what they need, or they don't have the skilled trades in their hand that they need. And so it was very important for Mr. Mundo, who has a lot of experience working with general contractors, to go to their location, talk through their bid with them, and make sure that we were picking not only the lowest bid, which isn't always the best idea, but the person that could get the job done. And this person actually can get the job done in about half the time of the second lowest bid. And they showed him how they could do that with a Gantt chart. So the lowest bid is about $2 million. We needed to include some contingency. It is the nature of the beast with these projects. I would love to tell you we won't have a change order. I can almost promise you we will have a change order for something, because it is the nature of the beast when you do a $2 million project. We also need some FF&E, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But it was included in your packet: the tables, the chairs, the balls, the furnishings, the things for the kitchen. We have some things on hand that were actually confiscated that my police chief has down in a Connex box, and we're going to be able to use some of that stuff. But we guesstimate there'll be about $70,000 in FF&E needed for the building. So that brings the total construction of the project to $2,131,584. And we currently have funding for $1,721,610. That leaves the city at a shortage of about $410,000. Next slide, please. So why is it over budget? Well, when this project started back in 2023, the goal was to develop a building that we could build within the budget. And I think anytime you have a budget and a project, you do your best. Linda's smiling because she's lived this world. You do your best to make those two things fit together in a box. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they just don't. We went through a number of renditions with this project, right? It was going to be a part of the pavilion. It was going to be an outside building. Then it was going to be a standalone building. We added some things as we went, added the outdoor restrooms so people would have access to those when they were at the park. And it has just changed over time. And as it changed and as it grew, and in fairness, when I started, it was more important to me that we do it right than we do it at the minimum and make it work. Because that's my background, right? My background is building and running community centers. And we wanted to make sure that we had goals that, Joe and I sat down, it's like, okay, we're short, now what can we cut? And he's like, you want stationary basketball goals? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay, Angie, then. I mean, that's not $409,000 by any stretch. But when we started looking at, could we cut things to get us back down within our budget, they were all really non-negotiables for this project because we had to have them. We had to have them for this facility to be able to be used for the community, to hold events, for the city and the EDC to hold trainings, all of those things. So the other thing is the cost of materials hasn't really softened. As you know, inflation is through the roof. I think when COVID happened and everything kind of skyrocketed because it wasn't available, as people that built things, we all thought, it'll balance itself out, right? And it just hasn't balanced itself out. Concrete is like, 70 times what it used to be 3 or 4 years ago. And this building has a lot of concrete with a concrete drive and a drive-through in the front. And it's got some features in it that, one, if we ever have another issue, another pandemic, we are set up for success, but that also make it convenient for your customers, right? I worked in a building that doesn't have a drive-through for my seniors to be able to get out in the rain, and this one does, and that's amazing because it's a huge asset when it's pouring down rain and you have a room full of seniors that want to play canasta, right? Which is exactly what this building is intended for. And so cost of materials haven't softened, and there you've got some numbers. In 2023, construction costs saw an increase of 4%. In 2024, it's slated for another 3 to 6. And that's just the national average, and unfortunately for us, it is what it is, and part of what contributed to the $410,000. Next slide. So the request from Gun Barrel is to the Economic Development Corporation to make a donation to the city for the project to help with construction. You all know this, but it absolutely is a qualifiable expense for a Type B to contribute to this kind of project. We can develop a payment plan. I can roll that out however the board recommends. We can do an upfront payment. We can do it all in one time. We can do a part upfront and then payments over 6, 8, 10 months, kind of like we do loans. We can do that however works best for the board. The request from the city, we would love to have the entire $409,000, obviously, right? That's why I'm here doing this. But I am willing to have that discussion with the board if there is another number that the board is more comfortable with. Next slide. Okay, so the benefit to the EDC. And I think you all know this, and this won't come as a surprise to anybody, but the community center really will be an extension of our community. And we had a great work session yesterday where we talked about a lot of ideas about how to help our businesses in this area. One of the main things that kept coming up was training and having a facility to do that kind of training. And the community center would be a great location for the EDC to host conferences, trainings, business events, to work with our chamber to be able to do some events there at our building, as opposed to us always having to go somewhere else to attend those type of facilities, to do regional workshops, to work with workforce development or TVCC to hold those kind of things, maybe classes. It's going to be a great partnership between the EDC and the city. The EDC right now is in a great position to be able to help, obviously. I knew that before he did that spill, so I'm not coming to you unprepared. And, you know, quality of life, and that's what this quote is, it's the Area Development Magazine. Quality of life is something that your businesses that are coming to this area look for. State Farm, when State Farm moved to Richardson, Texas, it was the #1 thing they looked for. Where are the trails? Where are the parks? Where is the public transportation? And they built where they built in Richardson because they had access to those things. We tried like heck in my past city to get them, but they built there because they had access to those things already built and they didn't have to be added. And so you can see there from Area Development Magazine, and economic development has become more compatible. Policymakers are offering more and more attractive jobs and new opportunities for their constituents. One of the areas most overlooked when comparing competing metro areas is livability factor or quality of life. And this would contribute to the quality of life in Gun Barrel City. Next slide, please. So, can the EDC afford to make a contribution? And it's burning in everybody's brain, right? Well, you guys know we've spent a lot of time getting our financials back in order. We've spent a lot of time putting our loan and grant program on hold this year to make sure that our collections are up to date. We're holding people accountable to the terms of their agreements. So those are the bank balances. Yes, the EDC is in great financial health. This contribution in any form or fashion would not break the EDC or in any way hinder us continuing to contribute to businesses that want to come here. Those are the bank balances of May 2024. You saw that in your financial report at the last meeting. Again here, depending on, you know, how you wanted to break it up, if you wanted to make a $410,000, you wanted to do 200 up front, we could do that. We would likely take that out of our sales tax revenue account, and then we could make continuing payments to the city out of that account as well. I did talk to the treasurer. Could we withhold payments, you know, instead of having to write checks back and forth? Is there an option to take the payments that would be coming to the EDC and put those back? That's not an option. I created an accounting nightmare and she nearly had a stroke on me. So payments would continue to come from the city for your sales tax directly to the EDC, and then the EDC could just make a payment back, just like they pay a portion of my salary or rent or anything else. Next slide, please, Stephen. So the city can fund the remainder of this project. The funding is available in the Capital Improvement Program Fund. It will mean other things in that list of projects, and we're putting that together now for the next year, could be put on hold. And, you know, every year we reevaluate what we spend those dollars on to make sure. Last year, I think they bought 2 police cars and they bought a number of different things. And so we would have to look at that list and see, how do we shuffle things around or postpone? There has been a continued desire for the EDC, and I've heard this since the day I started, and the city to partner more to become better partners in the projects that we do, and this gives us an opportunity to do that as the EDC. And there has been a desire of the EDC to fund things at the park, right? To how do we make our park better? And there are a lot of things that our park needs and a lot of things that we can do at our park, but I would argue that there's nothing more important than this community center and how it will bring not only our residents, but also our residents and businesses together. Job fairs, business expos, the list of things that we can do at this community center are endless in a partnership. So I am happy to answer questions. I will turn it over for you for discussion. Again, the city's request is $410,000. We can, as an EDC, afford to do that, but I want the board to make that decision. I have given you there a sample motion just to make it a little bit easier, because I know sometimes I get long-winded and then it's like, oh my God, what does the motion look like? The motion would look like something like, I would like to make a motion for the Gun Barrel City Economic Development Corp. To make a donation in the amount of blank to Gun Barrel City for completion of construction of the Gun Barrel City Community Center. We can work out the details of how we do that tonight or later, so.
Yeah, I've got a question.
You bet.
Can the EDC make a grant? Where it's not a loan? Can we just give the city?
Yeah, that's a donation. It would be the same thing.
The same thing.
Yeah, this is more of a donation.
I would like to open up the discussion with the rest of the EDC board to match the city. They're putting in $500,000. We saved $500,000 last year. Why not just go ahead and offer them a donation of $500,000? That helps them cover any other unseen expenses. Like she said, I worked in the military construction side. There's always going to be cost overrun. So if we give them a full $500,000 that we saved from last year, we're investing in this. Pardon. All we're doing is investing in the future of our city, and that's what I'd like to present. But that would be my suggestion to the board.
The contingency is already included in that 409,000, is that right?
It is. There's a $50,000 contingency. That is a small portion of the project, right?
What percentage of the profit is that?
I believe it is a little over 2.
That's
My
what
math
I
is
came up
horrible.
with,
You
about
probably
2.5.
I probably should have asked Mickey to do some math.
Okay.
Our auditor's here. Maybe he could do some quick math, but I think it's a little over 2.
That's about what I came up
A
with.
little
too.
over 2 is what.
Hang on a
what I
minute,
believe it
guys,
is.
hang on. The agenda allows us to go into executive session to discuss this very thing, and we're going to go into executive session to discuss deliberations about gifts and donations pursuant to section 551.074. This meeting is being adjourned to go to executive
Do
session.
we have to?
6:40.
Do we have?
It's up to y'all.
You're coming too, aren't you?
Huh? I can.
Yes,
You
you're
should.
coming too. PM, I call the regular session back to order. And by way of being open about what we were doing, we wanted to discuss exactly the logistics of how we could do this. We wanted to discuss the fact that we need an agreement, that's by law. We want to discuss how we were going to work it and going to work with it. The motions are going to be made, that'll be everything we talked about is going to be placed right up in front of us here. We talked about giving a certain amount of money, and we're going to do that. And we're going to help finance this thing. So whoever's got the
I do.
motion?
Linda?
I do. I would like to make a motion tonight, and this is a follow-up almost to Keith's initial discussion. I'd like to make a motion for the Gun Barrel City Economic Development Corporation to make a donation up to, but not to exceed, $500,000 donation to the Gun Barrel City for completion of the construction of the Gun Barrel City Community Center.
I'll second.
Have a motion, have a second?
You do?
Bond second.
Motion by Linda Rankin and Keith seconds.
Yeah, I did.
And any discussion? Any questions? Hearing none, let's vote to my right.
Bond, yes.
Ligon, yes.
Damiano, yes.
Key, yes.
Rankin, yes.
McCullough, yes.
Motion carries.
On behalf of Gun Barrel City and the City Council, thank you. We're excited for the partnership.
Yay.
And City Council, we want to be able to have people go in there and go to school, too.
We do.
We want to have some training in there. We want to be partners with the City Council in making this thing a reality and making it a perfect reality. All right, let's go on to the next item. Item number 9. Subcommittee updates? No, we back up.
Let's go to 7.
Item number 8.
How about 7?
How about 7?
Oh, I just want us to get out of here, okay? All right. We'll go back to number 7. Consider and take action to update the performance agreement with Cheney Tobacco Station Incorporated. Do I have a motion?
Wait a second, you're on a different agenda.
Hold on. We need to table that item, please.
Yeah, it's not in here.
I thought I deleted it from the agenda. Does he have an old copy of the agenda? Can you get him a current copy of the agenda, please?
This is a copy you gave me.
That's not the published agenda. So let him grab you a copy of the published agenda.
Okay. Now, item number 7, discuss the 2024 amended bylaw presentation by the Bylaw Review Committee. We're going to turn this over.
Linda, do you mind if I make a couple of comments before you start?
Please.
Please do.
So, Board, as many of you know, we appointed a couple of subcommittees early in the year. January, I think, was the first one, and we appointed a bylaw review committee to really sit down and go through the bylaws and make sure they were updated and they were current. And then also a loan and grant committee. But that bylaw review committee has met, I don't know, a dozen times since then.
Pretty much.
A lot. We had hard discussions. We had a lot of discussions. Linda has agreed to do the presentation. The subcommittee was Linda Rankin, Gary Damiano, and Keith Bond. So I had a lot of personalities in the room several times a month. But what I want to say is that those 3 people put in hard work to make sure that what they're presenting to you tonight is the best of the best. And they don't agree 100% on what you're getting presented tonight. This is a discussion item, so it's on here for you to discuss. We can pull the tables out and do a workshop, but I've learned in my time here in Gun Barrel, it is just as effective for you to have those conversations as at the dais as it is down at some tables where everybody can't hear what's going on in the meeting. So Linda has agreed. I think she got voluntold that she was going to do the presentation. Linda has spent a significant amount of time tracking changes throughout this entire process. She's kept one Word document. So she's going to do a little entry, and then Stephen's actually going to pull up the red line, which each of you have a copy, and Linda is going to take it from here. So Bylaw Review Committee, thank you from your director. You guys did hard work, you had hard conversations, and you walked out of that room every single time friends, even though there were days I thought you might box. I appreciate the hard work you put in, and the board should be proud of the hard work that they did.
Thank you, Angie. And I have to say, you did a great job of monitoring and helping us negotiate. One of the things I want to start with, as you can see on your screen, Bylaws Committee, we've already spoke about the references. We made sure that our bylaws were in order of Texas state statutes, which are at the top of our pecking order. The Texas Municipal League, we used their references and guidance from their legal department. The city charter and ordinances, we are doing our very best to stay in line with our charter. And the bylaws of other Texas cities, we did review, I believe, maybe 5 to 6 other bylaws, just to see how other cities larger than us and some our size would handle their bylaws. So we'll move forward from there. The state laws of greatest importance, and this is coming from the Texas Municipal League. And I think that this is where we were coming from for our entire sessions of trying to build these bylaws, is that we have recognized and want to make sure the city council understands we recognize them as the leaders of our city and the leaders of the EDC. They are the ones that have the power to put us on the board. They're the ones that have the powers to remove us. They're the ones that have the power to take away these bylaws and do away with the EDC. So we have to respect the fact that the city council is who we report to, and we wanted to make these bylaws work hand in hand with the city council. City council has to approve our programs. The city council, as I mentioned, can remove any and all EDC board members. City council must approve any changes. City council must annually review our financials, and the city council must approve the bylaws. So tonight, we're going to discuss the bylaws, and in hopes that through our discussion, we can come to the conclusions and present this to the council, hopefully next month. Beginning with page 1 of our red line, I'm speaking to our board now, we added section 1.1 and gave greater emphasis to where our registered office will be, our registered agent. And so we added a paragraph to begin the document. We then went on to section 1.2, our purpose. And as you can read in this, it also says that we are doing projects that are permissible by the all of the acts and statutes of the state. Coming on down, we just did more clarification and added local government code statutes and made sure that our references were in the bylaws of what we stand for. Then we have section 1.3, which is our powers. And there was not much, if anything, changed in it, which are everything is authorized and permitted by the terms of the Open Meetings Act and the acts of the Texas state statutes. You'll notice that then there's several paragraphs that are that have the strike through. Those are not actually removed from the bylaws. They were moved to a different section. So please just bear with me and we'll get back to those. If you go to Article 2, Board of Directors, Angie made sure we were very specific about saying, not using just the term director, but we have board directors. And then 2.1c, any board director may be removed from the board by the city council at will. And I want to make an emphasis on that. Anyone on this board can be removed at will and without cause. A vacancy of any director's position which occurs by reason of death, resignation, disqualification, removal, or otherwise shall be filled by the city council. It is not filled by our board. Section 2.2, vacancies and resignations. We have beefed this up because we wanted to make it very clear that once someone has been removed from this board or has resigned, that the remaining board of directors for the unexpired portion of a vacancy of an officer, not a board member, a vacancy of the officer of the board, shall be filled by election by the board from the remaining board of directors for the unexpired portion of the term of that office. The board election of new officers shall take place at the first board meeting following a vacancy. So we can't have an officer for more than 1 month. As you can see, it goes on to say any board director may resign at any time. It goes in writing and it should be given to the city secretary. Section 2.3, that struck through was actually moved to another paragraph, so there's nothing in that one that was changed. If you come down to section 2.8, conduct of business, we added a board member who is present at a meeting and abstains from voting where no conflict of interest exists will have his or her vote treated as a negative vote. Again, that was just moved from another portion of the bylaws. Jumping to section 210, conflict of interest. We reworded that and just filled, we added that it was a part of Chapter 171 of the Texas Local Government Code. We just tried to provide references in here. Article 3, officers. This was where it got interesting. We have determined that the officers will be elected annually at the October regular meeting. It won't be in September, it won't be in November, it will be in October, following the seating of any new board members. So new board members will be seated before the officers are selected. The term is still 24 months. We did discuss having a 3-year term, but we're staying with the 24 months. If a vacancy of any office occurs, the office shall be filled by election at the next regular board meeting, which we discussed earlier. The president of the board is elected by the board of directors annually in October. And we were talking about the duties of the president. The president shall preside at all meetings of the board of directors, call both regular and special meetings of the board as requested by the executive director, have the right to vote on all matters coming before the board, have the authority to appoint standing or study committees to aid and assist the board in its business undertakings and other matters. And then it goes on, but nothing in here says that the board is going to be going out and soliciting, or the officers are going to be going out and soliciting new development. The board is going to be doing their role of appointing committees to help and assist as volunteers to gather information. The vice president is elected by the board of directors, and we know that. The treasurer is elected by the board of directors and shall be the chief financial officer of the corporation, having oversight. Now, in the past, this has been contemplated, discussed, and many wanted a treasurer to be in charge of all funds. But having worked with Angie, and I think all of us on the committee, having seen that our financials are now in good order, we would like for our treasurer to have oversight of all of the funds and securities, and when necessary, the treasurer may sign or endorse on behalf of the corporation. And then coming on down here, the treasurer shall render to the board of directors a financial statement of the corporation's accounts on a quarterly basis. Now, this is new. This is not what we've been doing in the past. Instead of monthly, we're looking at a quarterly. The treasurer shall oversee the monthly finances, so the treasurer is still seeing these every month. And the finances will be maintained by the executive director, which we hope we have a good executive director, with a full accounting of all income and expenses laid out in writing and maintained in the corporation's office. It's not going to be maintained in a CPA's office. The treasurer shall perform all acts incident to the position of treasurer. And then we took out the treasurer, if required by the board of directors, shall give such bond for the faithful discharge of his or her duties. That's no longer necessary. An outside independent bookkeeping service shall be hired by the city and the corporation and approved by the board of directors and the city council to perform an annual audit, which is common today. Said audit will be prepared and submitted to the board of directors and city council by January. Now, this is something we've had a hard time getting accomplished, but hopefully we'll have audits by January of each year, because the fiscal year ends August the 31st, or September the 31st. Sorry. Huh? It's September the 31st, yes, or 30th. Yeah, I'm sorry. Now, Section 3.5, the secretary is going to have pretty much the very same duties and will oversee all of the minutes in the corporate books. And nothing really new during business hours, and shall in general perform all duties incident to the office of secretary, subject to the control of the board. Now, the executive director, we went in and had a long discussion about, because this is where we split on our vote. It was 2-1 as to who should the executive director report to. There was discussion that the executive director should report to the city manager, so that the city manager and the director can work hand in hand. The city manager can offer insight as to what the city and the city council want, and the executive director can come back and then report to the board. So there's one of us that would prefer that the executive director report to just the board, I believe. So that's where our dilemma lies. And I'll read this section 4.1 just to be for the record. The executive director shall be compensated full-time employee of the corporation. It's not a city employee. The executive director shall be the chief administrative officer of the corporation, responsible for all daily operations and the implementation of board policies and resolutions. The executive director shall attend all board meetings and perform the duties and functions as the board shall prescribe. The executive director shall be appointed by the city council. Now, the city council will be appointing the executive director, not the board. And the EDC board with an EDC board recommendation and reports. And this is the part where we had controversy. Reports to the city manager and EDC board of directors. And that can be open for discussion. The employment status of the executive director, including hiring, terminating, placing any other restrictions or qualifications on the executive director's employment, shall be the sole responsibility of the city council. The executive director will be evaluated annually by the board of directors and the city council, not just the city council. Upon evaluation by both entities, the executive director's contract will be reviewed, and this on an annual basis. And if changes are needed, those changes will be at the recommendation of the EDC board of directors and the responsibility of the city council. Then support staff, books and records are pretty much the same as we've always had. Section 4.3, the executive director shall prepare a budget annually to be reviewed and revised as needed by the treasurer before the budget is submitted to the board of directors. So our executive director will be preparing the budget. The treasurer will review it, and then it'll come before the board and then to the city council for adoption. Last but not least, then, on page 8 of the red line, the budget proposed for adoption shall include the projected operating expenses, anticipated revenues, projects and incentive expenses, and discretionary funds for future opportunities. And it goes on. And this is just normal wording for bylaws. Provisions regarding bylaws are standard, pretty much common, and that is it. So the floor is open, Mr. President.
Open for questions and discussion. We're just going to discuss this tonight, and so have a chance to digest this. We're just giving us, we're just getting it now. That's kind of, we want to have a chance to look at this and digest what we're looking at. I do have a question. Under the executive director, it's almost like we've got a conflict in what we're saying. Let me get to the executive director shall be the chief administrative officer of the corporation responsible for all daily operations and the implementation of board policies and resolutions. The executive director shall attend and call board meetings and perform the same duties
And functions.
and functions as the board shall prescribe. The executive director shall be appointed by the city council with EDC board recommendations and report to the city manager and EDC board of directors. The employment status of the executive director, including hiring, terminating, and placing any other restrictions or qualifications on the executive director's employment, shall be the sole responsibility of the city council. Then we turn around and say the executive director will be evaluated annually by the board of directors and the city council. So to me, I'm a little confused. Can you go over what your rationale was, at least in this first half of that paragraph?
We felt like that since we were the ones working directly with the executive director in our positions, that we wanted to have an opportunity to give feedback to the city council on our evaluation of the executive director. So we wanted to be able to review an evaluation or do an evaluation of the executive director and then allow the city council to know what our thoughts are.
Yeah, in the past, the way they were written and it was done previously, the last go-around, the board had absolutely zero input
Right.
into the evaluation. So the city council was given an evaluation form to try to judge somebody or to review somebody that they had no idea really what they were doing. So this just gives the board some input to help guide and to inform this, how we feel. what we think is going on.
And I think with the executive director reporting to the city manager is going to have a pretty good feel as to how the executive director is operating and can share those kind of information with the city council.
Any other discussion?
No, the only thing, I do not, I honestly look at the city manager's job and the executive director of the EDC to be two totally different positions from a standpoint of skills, knowledge, and abilities. I do not see how somebody who has maybe 10 years of city management can manage somebody who's got 10 years of economic development. One is a sales and marketing job, the other is an operations job. It doesn't make sense. If anything makes sense, it makes more sense to have the executive director report to city council. It doesn't have to report to the EDC. The EDC gets to evaluate the person who's the executive director. It just isn't logical. The argument I keep hearing on this is, well, it forces them to work together. Well, and my argument back to that would be, it's logical that whoever they are, they should work together for their own survival, for their own progress, for their own security. If they're not adult enough to realize that, then there's a problem on one side or the other. It's on the EDC, either on the EDC side, or it's on the city manager side, or on both. But it's up to both organizations to manage that. One doesn't have to report to the other, and it makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, just in rebuttal to one of your comments, city manager manages all departments. They're not trained to be policemen, they're not trained to be firemen, but they're trained to lead the departments. And they are going to be the ones that know what the city is trying to do it. And just like this community center, they're the ones that knew what the city council wanted done and could come to us. I just would like to have that continuity where it funnels down through our executive director to us so we know what is going on in the city and can accentuate and make it better.
If both people realize that their jobs are dependent upon each other and working together, that should happen. Like I said, if it doesn't, then it's a problem on one side or the other.
Yeah.
It's up to either entity to take care of the problem.
So that's
They
why
are
we.
two very different. And
That's
they
why-
should talk, and they should work together, Linda.
Well, that's why we agreed to disagree.
They
and we're still
did
friends.
agree to disagree, so I'm going to stop the two of them because they will spend the next hour arguing up there about this. Because they don't
Angie?
agree, right? And both. I
We-
think
I-
what's
when does
important-
this go into
I
effect?
came here to referee. I got to put on my sports jacket now.
Gotta vote on it.
Understand.
They both make good points, right? And I think they spent the team as a whole, not just Linda and Gary, spent several meetings talking about what this looked like and how does this person not really report to, but almost through the city manager? How does the city manager serve as a conduit to their success and the success of the board in line with what council wants? And I think at the end of the day, that's what Linda was trying to accomplish, was that it's not a direct report like a department head to me, right? So it's not like, or to any city manager, it's not your street department head, it's not your police chief, it's not your fire chief. It's more a symbiotic, ever-changing relationship where this person would, through might be a better word, but you can't put through in your bylaws because that doesn't make any sense, but really work directly with the city manager, maybe not even to increase communication, but to make sure, because you all are appointed by the city council, that the pulse of the city council is continued down that chain. If that makes more sense. Linda feels very strongly about the way that it's in the bylaws. Gary feels very strongly about his opinion about how it's in the bylaws. They have both shared that with you. What I don't want to get into is another hour or 2 hour conversation between the two of them of why they feel the way they feel. They both have very, very strong feelings.
Well, and
There were very few things that they did not agree on. I think there were 2 that we left that room 2-1.
Well, it's a
This is one of
democratic,
them.
it's a democratic society. 2-1 said yes, and this is what's coming
And
out.
I will also say that there are other cities that do this. There are other city EDCs that have this symbiotic relationship between the city manager, I think Ennis, in a fashion, has this same type of relationship between their city manager and their EDC director, just to ensure the success and that there is a common thread of planning and budgeting and priority focus between the two.
Yeah, and one of the thoughts that went through all this was the EDC director has a business contact them. And they start negotiating. You want that director to get with the city manager and say, hey, this is going on. You can't use the term, they will work together well.
Yeah.
We would love to have that. And I think reports, they're not directly, nowhere does it say that the city manager is over the EDC director.
I think it's just serves,
That's
it's
exactly
almost
what
like
that's
serves as a
saying.
conduit too, right?
Pardon?
The EDC, the city manager really serves as that conduit between
Right.
the EDC board and the city council, I think, for that person. I think that's kind of the intent.
And if we have a project that comes in where we know they're going to need infrastructure, perhaps the city needs to know about this infrastructure that's needed for a commercial building. And
We have
this
that
way,
option anyway.
this is when,
Dr. Smith, let me play the devil's advocate just a moment. We'll vote on this next month. It passes. When it passes, when will it become effective?
immediately.
It'll go to city council.
Yeah, it's got to go to city.
City council will adopt it and become effective immediately after that. At that point in time, we'll be in violation immediately because you're not a full-time employee. How are we going to do that?
You can't write bylaws for the position I sit in right now because my agreement with council was a shorter term agreement. So while I am currently both the city manager and the executive director, I don't believe that's council's long-term plan for it to always be that way going forward. I believe it was a solution to a problem. I don't want to speak for council. Y'all can come to the council meeting and we can have the same conversation with them. And them sitting on the dais could share with you what their thoughts are on that. You've heard me say this before. I don't think the intent of council when they hired me was for this to be a long-term solution. And the bylaws should be written as that is one human being, right? That does both jobs. This was an effort to, my job title was city manager, and then to be able to get some things working symbiotically between both groups. You guys had just had a significant turnover on your board. You had a turnover of your city manager and your EDC director within a short period of time. But I don't think for all of my career in Gun Barrel, I don't know that I can, for all of my career in Gun Barrel, wear two hats, right? Because there's going to come a point when we get things moving in the right direction that we need that. And so, yes, we would be for the interim until that happens. But I don't know that it's effective to write bylaws for today and then in a year rewrite the bylaws to change that. So today,
I've spent my
your
career
EDC
dealing with the
director
black letter law.
absolutely reports directly to your city manager. So we are doing that.
I have spent my career dealing with the black letter law. I just don't want to put us in a position where we're in contretemps because of what it says.
Yeah, and I understand. I just, we talked a lot about how do you write bylaws for today, knowing that that may not be the long term. Tomorrow council could decide, hey, we're ready to hire an EDC director, and then we got to turn around and rewrite bylaws to base on that. So I will confirm with Jeff before you vote on it, our EDC attorney, what conflict there might be. But I think he would argue that, me wearing two hats might be a temporary situation that is what it is today, but we're writing the bylaws for the future. So, but I will confirm that with our EDC attorney.
Thank you.
And I've got a question. Once we approve this and it goes to council, does council have the opportunity to make changes, or do they have to accept what we send them? Either accept or turn down?
They would either accept or send it back to you for amendments.
Okay. So if there was something in there they wanted changed, they could come back to us and want us to send that for it. Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. Subcommittee updates. I have a report from the Loan and Grant Committee, and that'll be Paul.
Yes. We met last month on the 28th, and we're still firming up our policies, and we expect to have a presentation for our next monthly meeting in July. Also, I'd like to bring up right now, as far as on our accounting issues, if we take out the Techstar that we don't want to mess with, we've got 1.3 million in our operating expense, and
Paul, this conversation isn't on the agenda for tonight because we did our May financials in, so this would just be an update from the loan and grant subcommittee on your progress on
Yeah.
rewriting the loan and grant.
okay,
Sorry.
Anything further?
that's it.
Any other questions for that? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Bond makes a motion to adjourn.
We're gone.